Word on an insane argument, possibly insane argument in Nietzsche. Nietzsche gives the impression sometimes that he's playing with the one who listens to him. Horen ist Kultur. So we're supposed to become cultured in the full sense through our instruction. So we have an appeal to listen to such an instructor as Nietzsche. But he gives this impression of being something like the O'Brien character in Orwell and playing with the mind of one who follows the circuits of his reasoning very closely. But the difference is in Orwell, 1984, I forget the name of the character, but the character being grilled by O'Brien resists very firmly as a matter of pride. I think he's broken down. Well, I shouldn't spoil the whole thing, but he resists. But when we think we might learn something, we're in a strange position with respect to being brainwashed, I suppose. So the argument begins with a number of undermining remarks concerning whether we know what we mean when we talk about willing and making a distinction between willing and thinking, and that every will, if I want to do something, say hold my breath for 10 seconds, contains the idea of holding the breath in 10 seconds and willing. And to call it a thought, to call it a will, somehow we could swim around in the meaning there. After making some undermining remarks, which I suppose remind me of remarks I might have cited before, Christopher Bolus, the great psychoanalyst, says that the dream is our most powerful form of thought. Carl Jung says we're always dreaming while we're awake in the unconscious. So Nietzsche is saying in the modern development, from the Aristotelian physics to the mathematical physics, that there's the same democratic impulse which rejects all hierarchies and all special cases of different estates, and which says that Diderot said that he couldn't wait for the day when the last king was strangled in the entrails of the last priest. And so this violent desire to remove all, how do they call it, resolve all hierarchies, to bring about total equality in the social sphere. Nietzsche is saying the same thing. We're at work in the deeper core of our thinking, and willing went right into our epistemology, our questioning of what is science. So, and so epistemology, by the way, is the question. Nietzsche's bringing this out too. If it's the question, if it's meant to be that science which tells us what science is, or science and knowledge, same thing, then how does it already have the standard in advance by which it knows if it gets the answer right? What science is totally open in this respect, because it comes through the fact that we have to think something when we think science, and something physiological, something of our daily lives is in the letters there. I mean, if you ask yourself, how does Helen Keller understand, how could she write a very serious book that everyone has praised, and it says many interesting things in it, and yet she was blind and deaf? How did she have the sense input? So the words, some people just picture words, and the words themselves contain thoughts in them somehow. This is also suggested. So the democratic impulse, Nietzsche is saying, in the question what is science comes in, because he doesn't go into the details, but it seems to me what he's saying is, for instance, in Aristotle, there was no democracy of movement. There were different things wanted to different things, if they had their own way, are obstructed. So, for instance, a stone, if you don't get in its way, it will fall down. What things will do if nothing obstructs them? They're perfect motion. So, eudaimonia would be the perfect motion for a human being. But for stone, it's falling down. But in the Galilean epistemology, there's no privileged motion. All motion reduces to one principle. There's simply mass. Everything is mass energy. There's no 1,001 different principles of motion, but which would actually be a different principle of motion for every being that there is. So that's it is a radical democratization, if you think about it. But then the thing that Nietzsche is saying, which is extremely bizarre, especially if we want to really try to weigh it and see if it's true or not, is he then makes another move, and he asks, isn't it that these laws, see, we just showed that there's two ways you can look at it. If these laws are interpretation of something, if they're an idea, if the law that only focuses on mass is the radically democratic idea, couldn't we also say of motion that what true motion is simply the will, because the will can take any content, but also because he spins it around and he says the way we're creating the meaning, creating rather than merely in a conventional way describing, creating the meaning of what knowledge is or what science is, and spinning it around this problem of what motion is. Ultimately, that leads back to the will to interpret, or to create, not just interpret, but to create this meaning that answers the question. And so then he goes on to say, when we fully look at that idea, the creation of the will to what the idea is, to call that tyrannical would be to soften what it really was, as though you were making some humanizing comment. It would be something, it's very incredible because it covers everything and it's manipulable in some way. It has a demonic flavor to it when it's taken that way. And there's some impression that Nietzsche has actually perpetrated this on us, because so many people are reading that book and he's playing his pulling the wires. He's pulling the wires. So it's quite worth continued meditation over.